Hi everybody, my name's Julia from Bobbins and Buttons, and this is the first in a three-part series that's a complete beginner's guide to making your own clothing. So I want to start by saying that there are a huge amount of resources online for making your own clothes. From inspiration to tutorials, and all the products that you're going to need is all easily available online. But when you're searching, one of the terms that you might not necessarily know about is dressmaking. So dressmaking is a common term that covers all clothing, and it can sound a bit misleading because it doesn't necessarily refer to dresses. It refers to everything from coats, tops, trousers, everything, and dresses as well. So it's worth using that term in your searches when you're looking for inspiration or products. So I just want to mention, when you are online looking for resources, you will come across a lot of independent small sewing businesses, and these are a really great place to go to because small independents are often run by people with a really big passion or lots of knowledge, so they are probably your best source of information and products as well for sewing. So I just want to mention 3 websites that I use quite regularly, and ones that I think will be quite useful for you when you're starting your sewing journey. So firstly, the Fold line. They're fantastic for searching for patterns, and they sell the patterns as well, so you can really look for any style, any size. Everything is available from the Fold line as a PDF or a paper pattern. And it's got a great search tool, so you can just find what you're looking for. Then when you're looking for notions and equipment and fabrics, if you want just a general kind of all-round store, there's 2 that are really great. One is Sew Essential, they're local to me, and they're also just really good. They've got great product lines of good quality products, and they sell a good extensive range, so probably catering for everything you're going to need. And likewise Minerva Crafts, they're not local but they are an excellent website with a great community as well for sewers and resources on there. So I just mentioned patterns, and a pattern really is your best place to start. There are different methods for creating clothing, but I'm going to refer to using a pattern in this set of videos because using a pattern really is the most common way of creating garments. So when you buy a paper pattern, you'll select a design that you like. So this pattern here is for this shirt dress, and it's got various different styles within the same pattern. So within this pattern you'll have a paper template with the pieces that you'll place on the fabric, cut round, and will become the garment. And then you'll also have a set of instructions for how to lay it out and cut it, and also how to make it. So these patterns come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. There's independent pattern makers, and then there's commercial pattern makers. So this is a typical commercial pattern, which are often printed on this very fine tissue paper, which you can pin onto the fabric, and then you'll have a large sheet of instructions like this. And then there's various independent designers, including myself. So this is one of my patterns, which comes with a thicker paper pattern. So my patterns are printed on a heavier weight paper, and then they come with this little instruction booklet with all the instructions and information in there. So I'm going to cover reading a pattern in the next part of this, but I want to just talk a bit more about patterns in this part. So I want to talk about choosing your first pattern and the garment to make. So you might have ideas that you want to make a really beautiful fitted dresses or tailored trousers or a jacket, But I would, to start with, I would go with something that's not too fitted and made in a fabric that's fairly easy to work with, like a cotton poplin or a slightly more structured medium weight fabric, because that gives you the opportunity to get used to the process of making the garment, and also working with fabric that's not too difficult to manage. So that really brings me on to the ratings of patterns. So you'll often find patterns are rated quite often easy, average or advanced. So naturally you'd go for something that's easy, but I find some of the labelling on patterns a little bit misleading, especially for complete beginners. So I've just got a few examples here. So this pattern is described as easy, and I would say the shift dress here is probably fairly easy because it's a fairly easy fitting shape and not too much detail. However, the shirt dress has got quite a lot more detail and might be a little bit too much for a very, very first garment. So although it's fairly easy, I would say that might be a second or third make. And then I've got another one here that's described as very easy. And again with this, although it's probably fairly easy to put together, the bodice is quite fitted. So unless you happen to be a standard fit, then I would say this again would be moving on to slightly more advanced if you need to do some fitting. And we'll come on to fitting in a minute. So I would probably choose something like this type of garment that's not too fitted. This can be made according to the instructions in chambray or linen. It also says silky types, but I would probably go for something that's more robust, like a cotton or a linen. And that it's very simple shape, it's not too fitted. And I think that would be a really great first garment. I want to explain how patterns are made. I'm a big believer in understanding the science behind the process so that the process becomes easier to understand while you're making the garment. And I think it's really important to understand how a pattern is made and the sizing, how the sizing works with a pattern. So a pattern designer will start off with a standard, a mannequin like this, and they will take body measurements, and those body measurements will be printed onto the pattern somewhere as body measurements, and they're the exact body measurements that the pattern has been designed to fit. And then on the size chart it will go up and down in standard increments to create the larger and smaller sizes. So also in the pattern you'll have a garment measurement size chart. So that will give you the actual measurements of the garment, because a garment will always be bigger than your body, and that's called ease. So something with a lot of ease that's very loose will be much, much bigger than your body measurement. So for example, this bust measurement is 34, and if the ease means that if the garment measurement is 47, you can see it's got that amount of ease. So it can help you decide which size to pick. You might have something that's very close fitting and only have 2 or 3 inches of ease, and therefore it's a much more close fitting garment, and you can kind of understand a little bit more about how it fits by looking at those garment measurements compared to the actual body measurements. So another thing to think about when you're choosing sizing is how your clothes fit when you buy off the peg. Do you have any problems when you go to the shops with fit? For example, for me, when I used to buy clothes, I could never buy a dress to fit because my bust was bigger than my hips, so I'd need a size smaller in the hips and a size larger on the bust. It's not an issue at all for making garments, but it's something that I'm mindful of, that I know that I'm going to probably be 2 different sizes on the pattern, and I'm going to need to blend them together to make the dress fit properly. And another thing that I often find with my makes is that my back is smaller, so I still do actually need quite a small bodice size, but I need to make a full bust adjustment to make it fit correctly. So it's just something to be mindful of when you're looking at your style choices, how that's going to be affected by different areas of your body, and just something to consider. So the one last thing that I'd like to mention in this video is that it's a good idea to make a toile. So a toile is a mock-up of the final garment that you want to make, but you just make it in a cheap fabric that's comparable to the fabric you want to make your final piece in. So if you're making a jersey garment, it needs to be a jersey fabric, but if you're making a woven middleweight garment, you can use calico or an old sheet, something like that. But with making a toile, you'll then check the fit, you'll be able to make alterations to the pattern, and you'll also be able to see if you like the style, check all the details before you make the real thing. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and it would be great if you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'll be back with the next 2 parts very soon, and hope to see you then.